Okay, welcome everyone. Let's see, we've already got people filing in here. Welcome to our webinar today. My name is Maris Macelis. I am the Director of Communications and Community Impact for Tennessee Environmental Council. We are a 501c3 here in Tennessee. It's a nonprofit organization, and our mission is helping people in communities improve our environment for all. I'd love to introduce our guests and our TEC team that's here today. Bryn Beecham is our volunteer and field event coordinator, and Dr. Monica Pretz is our staff biologist and pollinator program director. We're so excited to have our guest of honor who's presenting today, and I'll let Dr. Pretz take that over and introduce her.
Thank you very much, Maris. And thank you everyone for joining us. And yes, we would love to welcome you, Bieke, here. Dr. Bieke Puncochar is a psychologist at Vanderbilt University. She moved to Nashville from Belgium, so a fellow European. And she is not only a psychologist working with anxiety, but she is also a native plant enthusiast and the heart and soul of Neighbors for Native Plants. And we actually met this year at the National Native Plant Symposium where we were both presenting. And in the same time, about this year, me and Bryn and Mary's had a conversation, and that conversation led to this webinar. And the conversation was about, at the beginning of this year, a few articles came out about pollinator declines. We learned from a science paper that we have lost more than 20% the abundance of the Lepidoptera order, the butterflies and moth species in North America, in the United States. And we have also heard the devastating news about the honeybees that the last year, the last winter have been the worst on record on on the managed honeybee population declining. So we had between 35 to 90% reported honeybee decline. And while we are not studying honeybees, it is a clear indication. So we three of us had a conversation about our anxiety, and we decided that it's not just us, it's all of us, it's the community, and the best way to handle this is to invite an expert. So we would love to have your presentation, learn about from you how to manage our anxiety, how to manage our worries, how to be a part of this community and find the tools that help us and at the same time help nature.
Well, thank you, Monica. I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for inviting me. I'm excited to talk today about sort of the intersection of two of my passions, mental health and eco restoration. And I hope that I can kind of share with everybody how the helping the earth and healing the earth can actually be very beneficial for us as well. So I'm going to start, just a second. I'm going to start
Yay,
with.
and I'll just add, I did put it in the chat, but if you have questions, just put it in the Q&A and Dr. Punkachar will answer them at the end. So,
Thank you, Maris. Sorry, I
yeah,
forgot. And sometimes I might also have you like put something in the chat. So yes, thank you.
yay.
So like Monica said, I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm originally from Belgium. I actually don't work at Vanderbilt, but I got my PhD at Vanderbilt. I'm in private practice. And I accidentally discovered native plants during a psychology conference of all places. And it was actually during a kind of a boring moment. One of my colleagues, Dr. Joe McLaughlin, told me, hey, you got to read this book by Doug Tallamy called Nature's Best Hope. And so I got it from the library, and as soon as I got it, I just couldn't put it down. It was so compelling because Dr. Tallamy talks about how specific like pollinators need very specific plants to lay their eggs on and to reproduce. And I was like, wait, what? Not all plants are alike? Like it was sort of a new thing, a very new thing for me. So with that, you know, I was full of enthusiasm. I could not stop talking about about native plants. And my friend Laura Wallace, right here, she was like, "Oh, you need to talk to my friend Bethany Crandall because she also can't stop talking about this." So the two of us met, and you know, there were sparks and whatnot, and we decided to come up with a way to make it really easy for busy families like our own to do something good, to contribute to our ecosystem, but not to take away a lot of time because, as we know, we're all busy. So we kind of did the research on plants that are good for this area, and then we put together these pollinator kits. And we ended up telling everyone that our friends and neighbors, family members, and we got about 600 plants, native plants, to about 46 families, and we were just jazzed. And people were jazzed. So we thought, well, let's get organized. And so we got like a website and social media, and we did a few like TV, presentations, and that sort of helped us grow, and more people knew about it. And it's such an easy message to share because everyone's kind of excited about it. So right now we're having our sixth native plant sale. We do them twice a year, fall and spring. And we've distributed over 17,000 plants so far to our community, which just feels super happy. So that makes me very, very happy. Well, the last part is this sort of like, we'll loop back to the psychology where Monica like she said, she made that connection. She's like, wait, you're a psychologist and you love native plants. Can you talk to us about the intersection? And so that is what I'm doing right now. All right, so I want to start a little bit with this concept of like what even is mental health. And we can think of it a few different ways, but I am using the American Psychiatric Association and the World Health Organization as sort of looking at their definitions. So they're talking about like functioning effectively in your daily life, having positive relationships, and being able to handle change and cope with adversity. So the World Health Organization, basically, they kind of say the same things. And this concept of being able to handle change and cope with adversity is really getting harder. So, in the context of climate change, we're having more heat, and more heat is associated with more heat-related illnesses. There's also more natural disasters associated with more heat. And, with that is more post-traumatic stress, more displacement of people. For anyone who was in Nashville in 2020, you know how much distress comes with a natural disaster, because that's when we had the tornado. Aside from natural disasters, though, more heat can be associated with more anxiety, irritability, depression, and even suicide risk, as well as more violent behavior. On the flip side, when you're in a hotter world, the air quality is going down. Your food and water security is reduced, and it's harder to pay attention when it's hot, and it's harder to store memories. So the thing is, like, lots of things we need to adjust to. In terms of like loss of green space, like deforestation because of agriculture or because of urbanization, loss of green space is associated with increased mortality. It's also associated with just like more fragmentation of animal habitats. And as we know, many animals need uninterrupted habitat, and it's all interrupted. It's all chopped into little pieces now. More pollution, endangered and extinct species. So like that's not great, right? We also are seeing just like less biodiversity. If you think about fewer trees, fewer plants, there's less heat mitigation because plants actually absorb quite a bit of heat. So you probably experience like feeling cooler in the woods than you do when you're in the middle of the city. And then also areas that have more trees and more green space tend to have more people coming outside and walking around and meeting their neighbors. So social cohesion is different in more green areas than less green areas. So I know this is kind of a lot of negative stuff, but I wanted to start off this way because this is, of course, some of what fuels the anxiety. So I think an important concept in all of this is the sense of coping. Can I cope with the situation? And so when the demands of a situation are pretty much well matched with like how you think you can handle that situation, like your perceived skills, things are great. Even though things might feel challenging, you feel like you can do it, your mood is stable, and you're going to engage in effective problem solving. However, when the situational demands seem to exceed your skills, then there's going to be increased anxiety, more depression, more stress hormones going through your bodies, more overthinking, you're going to avoid, and you're actually going to have reduced problem solving skills. So if we think about like the loss of green space and climate change, those are situational demands, and we think about ourselves and our little skills, sometimes it can feel very overwhelming. And we might all withdraw and shut down and feel helpless, like there's nothing I can do. If you want to put in put in a chat, like, hey, I feel that way too. I feel like there's nothing I can do. Feel free to like add it in there, because I'm kind of curious how many of you have a sense of like, I know I'm going to do something about this and I feel good about it, versus sort of a little bit more of that sense of hopelessness or helplessness. So really, climate anxiety can be looked at a few different ways. So on the one hand, you can think of it as like, actually, it's a pretty natural, rational response to the situation we're in. There are existential threats. And so if you feel nervous about that or feel sad about loss of biodiversity, that's pretty natural, normal, and it actually can motivate you to do something about it, to connect with other people who think this way, just to like start acting in ways to reverse some of these challenges that we're facing. But of course, it can also switch into impairment, so like this whole sense of like, if you have a chronic fear of like that's a typo, sorry, of environmental doom that is just like persistent, overwhelming, and it just leads to impairment in your daily functioning, then of course it sort of switches. I don't advocate like pathologizing climate anxiety, because I think it's important as a motivator for change. But when it starts to interfere with functioning, of course, like more help is going to be needed, and treatment is likely needed to help you get back to this other part where you still feel worried, but you're going to do something with it. The next piece is just, I want to just show you guys some different types of treatment models and how they might be helpful for climate anxiety. So I'm using two different ones. One of them is CBT, which stands for cognitive behavioral therapy. The other one is ACT, which stands for acceptance and commitment therapy. And they kind of go about things a little differently, but they both have an important component of behavior. So in CBT, the idea is like, okay, well, you've probably got a bunch of thoughts that may not be completely true, and they may be a little bit unhelpful, even if they are true. So let's like examine your thoughts, and by making them more realistic, maybe we can change your feelings. So I added these pictures in here because one of your thoughts might be like, everything is doomed in the environment. And that can be changed into there's major problems, but there are also some things that are getting better. Like the bald eagle, humpback whales, and elephant seals, they were on the brink of extinction, and they have been able to bounce back thanks to the preservation efforts that are on their way right now. So that can be helpful to like work on those thoughts, and then they change your feelings. Another component of CBT is behavioral activation, meaning you're going to, instead of like being on the couch under your blanket feeling bad about what's happening, you're going to be instructed as part of this treatment to do something rewarding. And that tends to benefit your mood. With ACT, they go about it differently. They say, okay, you know what? You might feel anxious and depressed about all of this. Yes, it's terrible. And can you tolerate that those feelings are there, and do engage in behaviors that are actually consistent with your values? So if your values are like, I care about the environment and I want to do something about that. Yes, but I feel very anxious about all these bad things. The idea with ACT is, let's have you do things that are in line with your values. And so here comes the eco-restoration piece.
And Bieke, I wanted to tell you, some people in the chat were responding to you just really quickly.
Perfect. Oh, thank you.
They're saying that sense of doom can feel overwhelming at times. There were some comments about climate anxiety residing about thinking about their children.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And we were talking about this a little bit before we jumped on the bigger thing. Yes, our children are kind of getting what we have created, and we got what people in front of us or ahead of us created. So absolutely. And I think it makes us also motivates us to take action, because we know our children will be receiving this world from us. Thank you for sharing that, Bryn. So anyway, something that's rewarding and in line with values can be eco-restoration. And I want to share with you guys just the idea. What is eco-restoration? The United Nations described it as like a process to like halt and reverse degradation of ecosystems, and then also increasing biodiversity, basically both through natural regeneration, which means like we're just going to leave nature alone, stop damaging it, and it actually bounces back really well, as well as through active interventions like, okay, what can we do? Can we plant plants here? Can we do this? Clean up waterways and so forth. So in my opinion, there are several different mechanisms that contribute to why eco restoration really helps human health. And one of them is, actually, I'll talk about each of those separately, but I want you guys just to look at the slide for a second. I think each of these has their own way of influencing well-being, but then also they interact with each other. So the first one is a sense of caring for others and volunteer. And caring for others can be for other people, but it also can be for other, like for plants, for insects, like for animals and so forth. So Thich Nhat Hanh talks about this concept that by taking care of another person, you take care of yourself, and vice versa. So the research shows that people who volunteer and people who care for other people tend to have lower rates of depression and anxiety, which is great, right? Because we're stuck with all these feelings of like sadness and whatnot. People also have less feelings of hopelessness. Their loneliness goes down. And I highlighted this here because I'm going to talk about it more later because that's a really important factor. Also, blood pressure goes down, cortisol levels, which are like your stress hormone. So your stress hormone goes down as you care for and others and volunteer. And people who volunteer, this is especially in studies with older individuals, but people who volunteer tend to live longer. So that's pretty great, right? So also volunteers have higher life satisfaction, more optimism. And this one I think is important to talk about. Remember how I told you that mental health is all about like sort of like handling stressors? Well, volunteering helps buffer you from those stressors. So they're still there, okay? They're still there. They're not going away, but you are able to take them in a way that is, you just have more resilience around the stressors. Connected to loneliness is a heightened sense of belonging. A lot of times when you're volunteering, you're more physically active, and that then leads to all kinds of positive health benefits. And also volunteering and helping other people, altruistic acts, can really activate the reward circuits in your brain. So kind of like resulting in this like helper's high, where you just feel like so excited and so happy as a result of like giving to others or doing well for others. And I want to show you this picture here, because I am all about this picture. So these are our volunteers from the spring sale this year. And this is actually before the spring sale. I should have taken a before and after, because after the spring sale, like the smiles were even bigger. We were all just very excited. And I think that being in community, as well as like giving and being around plants and learning from each other and connecting, was just a very, very positive experience. That I maybe added a little bit of few days of life to these people's lives. Okay, so belonging. Remember I talked about loneliness and belonging. Belonging is huge. So it's actually a fundamental need for all of us. And it sort of is, the sense of loneliness is increasing. So research shows that like especially people like 13 to 29 and then older adults are experiencing a lot of loneliness. 1 in 6 people experiences social isolation and significant loneliness. And it actually, aside from psychology, it has a huge effect on your physical health, to the point where the World Health Organization equates it to smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. I thought that was just kind of crazy because we all think smoking cigarettes is pretty bad for your health, but being lonely, I don't know if we typically think of that as something that damages your health or impacts your health, but it does. One thing that's really neat about it is actually engaging in caring for others, volunteering can give you a sense of belonging. And so like altruistic acts tend to flip that on its head. And if you have loneliness, volunteering can really help reverse that and benefit you and the greater good. Okay, so I just put this in here because some of these thoughts that can change around eco-restoration is like, I'm not alone in these words, because like feeling isolated and alone only contributes to worse mental health, but feeling I'm not alone, and actually there's a whole community of people who feel this way. And Monica, you said the whole thing about like the 3 of you guys talking about like, oh, what do we do with this anxiety? Like even being together and being able to connect with other people about that probably alleviated some of the stress. And then you sought out as a next step, which now I'm here talking about it. I'm not totally solving your climate anxiety, but I just wanted to contribute like to that. So and a few other factors that I believe are very important in explaining why eco-restoration is so beneficial for us are meaning and purpose, hope, and self-efficacy. And I kind of put them on the slide together because they all impact some of the same concepts. So meaning and purpose is really the sense of like, nature, the environment is very important to me, and I feel strongly about doing something about it. And that ends up being associated with lower symptoms of depression, lower anxiety, lower disease burden. And also, again, that stress resilience. Can you handle stressors? People who feel a sense of purpose in life, they can handle stress better. They also can problem solve more easily. They're persistent because if you think about tackling any goal is going to be very challenging. And sometimes you're going to want to give up. But if you feel a sense of purpose, you're more persistent. And also, and this is like, this is a lot of these data are from older adults, but like this part here is people who feel a sense of purpose end up engaging in more healthy lifestyle behaviors. So like preventative care, more physical activity, and so forth. So these two do the same thing. People who have hope about good things happening have all the same benefits that you see here on the slide. And people who feel like there's something I can do that actually makes a difference, that sense of like, what I do matters, that can also be associated with all of these great outcomes. There are some things that are unique. So on this next slide, some of the things that are unique, for instance, about self-efficacy, like feeling like there's something that I do that actually matters, people tend to feel less burnout. And so, as you guys probably know, burnout is a pretty big deal and really impacts a fair number of people. So getting up there, feeling like I'm doing something for the environment and makes a difference helps us so much. The other thing is hope. Hope ends up helping us recover faster from surgery. It gives us better outcomes after a cardiac illness. And so like hope really fuels, and it's also connected to like all the other factors, like it just fuels positive affect and lower stress. And then as a result, we end up recovering more quickly and easily from setbacks, which physical stressors. Meaning and purpose, by the way, don't you love this? This is a Luna moth. It showed up in our yard and to me, it's just incredibly beautiful. So I wanted to throw it on a slide. But meaning and purpose, people who have a sense of purpose, they are less likely or they're more likely to live longer. And so different studies are showing different numbers, but like kind of across all ages, we're seeing a pretty significant reduction in mortality. Now, everyone dies, right? But we're talking about when you die or whether or not you died in the span of time that people were followed during this research study. So the other thing is better sleep. You go to sleep, you know what what you feel called to do in this world, like you tend to sleep better. So let me show you this. I've been talking a lot already. I want to talk about why exposure to green space is important, but I'm going to speak quiet for a moment and have you just read a few quotes, okay? Okay, so Margaret Rankel in her essay about on Earth Day a few years ago, talked about the sense of like disconnection, like we feel like nature's out there and we're over here. But the thing is, we have like kind of an innate need to be affiliated with nature around us. And E.O. Wilson talked about that as biophilia, like our desire to affiliate with other organisms, other living organisms. So I'm going to let you read this slide now. So, and even this whole idea of like we need nature to be well is not new. Back in 1901, a Scottish conservationist, John Muir, wrote about the importance of wildness and nature. So I'll let you read that next. I love this. Wildness is a necessity. And so even back in 1901, people were tired and nerve shaken and over civilized. And I think that a lot of us feel that way now. So this is not a new concept. I want to do a little experiment. Okay. I want you guys to look at this picture and just sort of like check out all the things about it and then check in with yourself. Like, what are you noticing? What comes up for you? How do you feel? Here's another image. Also, How does that feel to you?
Do you want people to say in the chat if you want to hold on this?
What, in a minute,
Okay.
yes. Okay, and then another image. Okay, so now close your eyes if you can, or ever kind of look down, take a breath, and then look up at this next image. Again, kind of like take it all in, notice what you're feeling. Here's another. And then here is another one. So I'd love to have people put in a chat some of the things that they noticed in, the first three images versus the next three images, like what came up, what was noticeable, how did you feel, or how did your feelings change? Bryn, if
So
you want to share some.
we've got some. It's sad and stressed, then lifted. Someone said, Leanne said, I can't breathe, and then I'm breathing better, felt happier. Expansiveness. I noticed furrowed brows with the first three and a big smile for the last ones.
Mm.
Um, let's see. First two images make me feel tightness in my chest, just overall not great. I could not think or breathe with all the business, then felt a relief and openness. Machines, people, speed, competition, then softness, open space, togetherness. Stress, no plants, no colors. And then second, calm and peace. Ugliness to beauty. A move
Mm.
from stress to calm.
Wow. Wow. Beautiful. Thank you guys so much, because you all said it better than I could have said it. So yes, they've done research where they show people different images, of like busy urban scenes versus like calm nature scenes. And typically they check this out, like how people feel if they've first been stressed and then shown these different images. And they're finding that people first stressed recover more easily if they look at nature pictures as opposed to other kinds of like urban pictures. Um, this slide kind of summarizes some of the research. By no means was I able to like get everything on here, but I just wanted to share a few fun findings associated with exposure to green space. So exposure to green space is associated with lower mortality rates. So like, again, these are longitudinal studies where they follow people over like, 17, 18 years. And then they look at like the number of people dying during that time. One of the things that's interesting here, these two studies I want to point out to you guys, you may or may not be familiar with the emerald ash borer. It is a pest that attacks ash trees and has caused a lot of devastation and dying of trees. This study looked at people's well-being and people's basically aliveness. They looked at how many people died before an invasion of emerald ash borer and then after an invasion. They have like 20 years of time, 10 years before the emerald ash borer arrived and then 10 years after or so. And what they're finding is that more people are dying when there's fewer trees, which is pretty terrible, right? But there's a very positive twist to this, which is the Oregon tree planting study. And this was a study that was done over 30 years, and I believe over 50,000 trees were planted. And what they're finding is that for every tree planted, there's a small reduction in mortality. And that the effect of trees in your neighborhood is especially pronounced when when those trees are about 11 to 15 years old. So, at that point, the trees are bigger. The trees give you more shade. They're probably, they're storing more carbon. They're probably helping purify the air more. But it's fun to me to see that an act that any of us can participate in, like planting trees, can really reverse some issues associated with loss of green space. Being outside, exposure to green space also reduces, again, cortisol, that stress hormone, and lowers your heart rate. So stress reduction after stressor is much more pronounced when you've been exposed to green space than when you're doing something else. Exposure to green space also is associated with more physical activity a lot of times and reduced type 2 diabetes, less like rumination, going over and over things in your head. And even most of us are familiar with the gap in health associated with income, where people with lower incomes tend to have worse health outcomes than people with higher incomes. But when people live in very green areas, that gap is much smaller. So like planting more trees can really help like buffer some of this gap and help make it smaller. Recovery from, exposure to green spaces also helps people recover from surgery, even if they just see through the window. Like if you're in a hospital bed and you're looking out the window and you see a tree or some kind of green space, you will recover more quickly than if you look at a brick wall. Attention is like restores more quickly after you've been mentally fatigued if you've been outside. So you might attention restoration theory is a big theory that talks about like when you're outside, you kind of like can have more diffuse attention. You notice the leaf, you notice the wind blowing in the trees. And as a result of that, your cognitive resources that you need at work, for instance, where you have to be very focused, gets sort of restored. It's almost like a little battery, like a cognitive focus battery. And as you walk around, you restore that battery and then you can come back and be more focused. Our memory even improves as a result of exposure to green spaces because stress interferes with memory consolidation. And if you have lower stress levels, you can remember things better. And also because you paid attention more easily. Mood is improved and self-esteem is improved. There's some studies that look at young people in a sense of like adolescence and finding that adolescents who are more exposed to green spaces tend to have higher self-reported self-esteem. So I want to share this one with you, this picture. So last week, I led a wildflower hike at our local park, Shelby Bottoms. And when we got out to this field, which is just like full of these gorgeous flowers and full of pollinators that take advantage of these flowers, everyone just had that sense. I think one of you guys talked about sort of this lift and you can breathe and you just feel expansive. That's exactly what we felt in that moment. And so I asked the participants if I could take a picture of them to show the joy and awe that comes with being exposed to beautiful green spaces. And at the top here, you can see some examples of different species that were just there. So that was lovely. So it talked about green space, right? This is like, could be either you're looking at a picture or you're like outside walking around having those benefits. But when you get your hands in the ground, there's even more benefit associated with being outside. So we see that gardening is specifically associated with depression and anxiety reductions, more life satisfaction. I think this one's kind of fun, this study. There's several studies actually looking at like, what does gardening do to stress levels? So they had people engage in a stressful task. And after that, they told them to either go garden for 30 minutes or to read a book inside for 30 minutes. And they found that the people who gardened more quickly had like a reduction in cortisol, their mood improved, and they were able to focus better than the people who read a book. The other thing with gardening is that oftentimes people do that with other people. So sometimes community gardens, or even just like I'm in my yard and my neighbor's in their yard and we're talking about gardening. That leads to more social cohesion. And as I talked about before, that belonging and that sense of community can be so important for health. Of course, if you're like picking out weeds and doing whatever, you're going to have more physical activity. So it benefits you in that way. And then last but not least, when your hands are in the dirt, you're going to be exposed to soil microbes. And those soil microbes are actually really important for our well-being because they are helping boost our immune system, and they can be associated with an increase in serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter responsible for feeling good in our brain. So people with symptoms of depression oftentimes go on a medication that helps with the serotonin. So there was really fun studies where they had these preschool kids that were either playing in like normal preschool sandy kind of areas versus like diverse soil, and they're finding that kids with playing in the more diverse soil had higher immune system factors in their actually they had higher serotonin levels as they measured them, and they also were showing a stronger anti-inflammatory response, so a stronger immune system. All right, so I kind of want to summarize a little bit before I go into more practical things, that, eco restoration can really like make us more engaged in things that are in line with our values, less anxious and depressed. We've got more purpose. We feel more hopeful. We're more present in the moment also, because when you're like digging a hole for a plant or you're caring for a plant, you're more mindful. And it makes us also more connected, or it can make us more connected to others, not just people, but, the world around us, and healthy overall. Um, Again, I'm bringing Margaret Rankle back into this because she writes so beautifully, but just read this for a moment. So yeah, it's not just good for the earth, it's good for us too. And I think that the earth really needs us right now. As as you guys were saying in the introduction, there is a lot going on that is not great. And so the earth is needing us. And I feel like if that wasn't enough of a motivator, then here's the extra motivation. Each of us will feel better as a result of participating in healing the earth. So a few practical things that you could do easily, and these are some things you can do on your own. I'm going to talk about things that you can do together with other people as well. But you can first of all, and this is of course my angle because I love native plants, but there's lots of ways to get involved. But learn about why they matter, like the importance of native plants. Plant them in your yard or on your little balcony or whatever. Potted plants can contribute to as well. And then notice what happens in just one season of planting these species. I would love to see if people could say how familiar they are with like why native plants are important. Could you just write in the chat like, I know nothing about it, or I like feel like, yeah, I know it already. Like, tell me a little bit about where you are so I can see how to kind of take the next steps.
They support the birds and the bees and the wildlife. And we've got some that are very informed. Who else knows about it? Supports birds and insects.
All right.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, I'll do a quick Native Plants 101, just a quick overview, because I'm imagining if you're in the camp of like, I don't know, you're probably not going to want to put that in the chat. So here is a little overview. So the idea of native plants and why they matter is because they have co-evolved with local pollinators. And so most local pollinators can only lay their eggs on native plants, and because their caterpillars can only eat the leaves of certain native plants. It's not even all native plants. They have made these, like they basically have developed these enzymes to be able to digest the leaves of different specific plants. And those plants are called their host plants. And caterpillars are an essential part of the food web because they're, like you guys, the people said, they are important for birds. They are important for turtles. They're an important source of food for lots of different creatures. And then those creatures are an important source of food for other creatures. Also, thinking about pollinators in particular, pollinators are so important for having the plants around us reproduce, including the plants we eat. So, sometimes pollination happens through wind, and there's also some plants that reproduce not through pollination, but approximately 80% of all plants need pollinators to reproduce. So we need to keep pollinators, and we need to make sure there's enough of those to then have caterpillars to be eaten, and then still there to be pollinators for the plants. The other thing I found so fascinating is that you will see bumblebees and butterflies eat nectar of non-native species as well as native species, but the composition of like the nectar and the pollen and the berries in native plants is sort of like best suited to meet the needs of local insects in terms of how much fat, protein, sugar, and so forth are in those sources of food. Even thinking about migrating birds, our berries, our native berries, tend to have a good high fat content, which is very important for migrating birds. And plants that we brought in from elsewhere might not have that same sort of nutritional composition. And this is a picture about my yard before I knew anything about native plants. So, I'm lucky enough to border the park, which is amazing. And really what you see here is mostly grass. And then I got this guy in here because Tennessee has so many mosquitoes, right? And so most people don't love mosquitoes. And we were really happy to have found this company that was like using essential oils and organic methods to target those mosquitoes. We're just like feeling like you feel good about the environment and you don't have to deal with mosquitoes. So that was me before knowing anything about these native plants. What I've learned since then is that these organic methods or essential oils or whatnot don't just hurt mosquitoes. They actually hurt all the flying things, all the insects. And so, yeah, you don't have as many mosquitoes. And on top of that, you don't have butterflies, you don't have bumblebees. You're actually hurting the ecosystem by doing this, which was news to me. So, back in the fall, and I don't know if you can see this, but this is a fall of 2022. In the fall of 2022, this is like after I had just like read the Doug Tallamy stuff, and I was like, all right, I'm doing this. We brought in, like, we decided to make this area of the yard an area for native plants. And so we did some sheet mulching, with the cardboard, and then put a whole bunch of leaf mulch on top of it. Basically, like, a lot of people don't like leaves in their yard, so they put them in bags and put them by the street. And we were the weird people that would collect them and then put them in our yard. But by adding this, you're putting so many nutrients in the soil, really nutrients that everyone should leave around their trays. So this was the following spring. Actually, you see here a fence, because at that point we discovered, oh man, the deer, they will eat anything, even things that are deer resistant. And rabbits were kind of an issue as well. So we decided to just mainly keep the deer out so that the plants would have a chance to start growing. And then by the summer of that same year, all of these creatures and plants were just all there. I mean, it was, some of these even just popped up without us planting them, because they're in the seed bank. And if we don't mow them as part of like keeping the lawn nice and short, they just pop up. So this one, for instance, was one that showed up on its own. And it was incredibly rewarding to see that, like, an act that like didn't really take that much time is already feeding back into the ecosystem. So very rewarding. This is a picture of what our yard looked like yesterday. So this whole native area, we've made it a bigger over time, but this whole native area is just thriving. There's birds, there's butterflies, there's just everything you can imagine. And it's so fun. In the morning, I'll just walk around and kind of get a quick dose of that green space. And I like look at different things happening and flowers opening up and so forth. Also, I want to really highlight this. So the mosquito bucket of doom. Jo Bruschetta has talked a lot about this. She does the Sidewalk Nature blog, and she highlights this because we don't like mosquitoes. I mean, I don't like mosquitoes. I know they do some good things for the ecosystem, but most of us don't love being eaten alive, and they love me. So mosquito buckets of doom are really a great way to like deal with that. So you get a bucket, you get water in the bucket, you put some grass clippings, some sticks and whatnot, and then you put a stick in so that if someone falls into the bucket, say a frog or whatnot, they can crawl out. Then you get these mosquito dunks. You can get them at any hardware store. You put them in there, and what they do is they actually kill the mosquito larvae. So the mosquitoes are going to be very attracted to this bucket of doom. They're like, ooh, great spot. So they'll put their eggs in there, and then the larva will die as a result of the mosquito dunk you put in there. You need a few around your yard, but they take care of it, and they don't kill any other insects, which is amazing. I want to also talk a little bit about examples of things you can do in your community. So you could talk to your friends, your family, your neighbors. You can join an organization focused on native plants. Here's a few examples. You can also volunteer in projects that are all about eco-restoration. So you guys at TEC, you guys are doing pollinator garden installations and stuff, so forth. Also, there's like opportunities to do invasive plant removal days at your local park, because there's a lot of plants that came over from elsewhere, sometimes by accident, sometimes on purpose, and that have actually taken over. They've taken over, they're pushing out native plant species. And guess what? The deer don't eat them, so they have kind of free range. Or you could start your own organization and partner with other people based on your passions and your skills. Before I move on, Maris, did you want to say something about like eco restoration projects that you guys currently have available that people could sign up for, or where they could even sign up for those?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we're on social media, and we can put that in the chat. And if you're following us, you'll see different graphics come up for litter cleanups and different opportunities in that sense that it's not only pollinator stuff that we do as well. And then we also have a get involved page. So I'll just go there real fast and just kind of shout out some different things going on. Yeah, so actually was yesterday. Yeah, we had a Stones River cleanup yesterday. We're gonna probably be at the Hummingbird. I think Monica can speak more to this, but there's a Hummingbird celebration at Warner Park this weekend. We also do recycling roundups and like there's different things that I mean they're not necessarily restoration, but just like Bika said, getting around people and your community that want to see the world, they want to be the solution, which is something we say a lot, our tagline. But we also have yeah, it looks like another cleanup at the end of this month on September 27th. That one's going to be a fun one at Percy Priest with the Army Corps of Engineers. And they're actually going to have like a pontoon boat and some lunch. And yeah, so there's keeping up with that online on social media is probably the easiest. I also put out a newsletter every Monday and we call it Good News Monday, right? Because there's a lot of bad, there's a lot of things that can that we can look at in the perspective of like this kind of sucks. But we wanted to flip it, not to ignore reality, but to, like Bika said, like train our minds to go to the good things that are happening and to the community that is doing something about it, and then teaming up with that. And if Monica or Bren want to add anything else to that.
The only thing that this Saturday is the Warner Park Hummingbird celebration. We will be there tabling, so join us to learn about pollinators. And yeah, just join the newsletter because we have a lot of events coming up with our fall garden maintenance program too.
Okay, wonderful. So I want to kind of like throw this out there sort of at the end. If any of you are interested in like starting to grow some native plants and you're like, but I don't know where to start or I don't know which ones to pick. So the organization that I was talking to you about, my passion project, if you will, is Neighbors for Native Plants. And we offer pollinator kits twice a year. And right now we're doing our fall sale. So the deal is people go to our website, then they can, and someone, I think maybe Maris, you can put the website in the chat so people can easily access it. You can order a kit. You can order a sun kit. You can order a shade kit. The sun kit right now is focused on monarchs to rescue the monarchs. So we want to make sure that their nectar sources and their host plants where they can put their eggs are available in the sun kit. And then people, after you order them, you get to just sort of like wait for November 2nd, which is when you can pick up these plants. And at that point, you're going to put them in the ground and, there will be the top of it will die back, but then the roots, that's really what we want to have plants. So we want their roots to really get established before spring. And then by springtime, you're going to have beautiful plants coming up that support a ton of life. You can also sign up for our newsletter. We don't send many newsletters. We basically do 2 a year just to let you know that the plant sale is happening. And you could also follow us on Instagram. So if you're interested in that, like go for it. We want to just get the word out to as many people as possible. But there's also places you can buy native plants all year round. Like Wonder Gift and Garden in Kingston Springs is a place where you can buy a bunch of beautiful native plants. So that's kind of those are some of the things I wanted to share with you guys. I am so thankful for your attention and for you even wanting to be here. And if you want to get in touch, feel free to reach out. And also, if you want to learn more, take a little screenshot of these different resources because there's a lot of information out there, and it is just we all need to learn about it and then take action. So thank you so much.
Awesome. That was incredible. And Bryn, I know that there were some questions that ended up in the chat that you're gonna ask Bika.
Yeah, thanks so much, Bieke. This was great. I love watching your presentations. I feel like they're just so engaging. So great job. Yeah, so we had a couple questions that ended up in the chat. One question from Brad Perry, and I was curious about this too. They ask, I wonder if the healthcare community is being more thoughtful about the location of healthcare buildings or hospitals, and at least exposure to green space in the healing process.
Oh, I love that. Yes. Thank you so much, Brad. So there, in terms of like the space of a hospital, I think that there's a lot of work that can be done in terms of like what we put in those little spots that where people can go outside or where people can sit in the little garden in the hospital or whatnot. I think that's very important. I don't know of I don't know of current like, and there probably are some, but I'm not aware of hospitals that are built in such a way that people have clear access to green space. But I have seen some interventions with people where they are actually prescribing eco restoration or prescribing gardening as like an intervention. So there was this one study that actually with people who are in prison who then were taught about native plants and then got to also spend time outside tending to the land and noticing the connection between the plants and the species that depend on them. And those people they were showing a reduction in anxiety and depression as well. And so like some of these research studies are a little bit early on, but I mean, not early on. They're just like it's a newly studied field, but they are very promising. And I hope that, next time as people go to the doctor and you have some of these issues, they'll be like, all right, you need to do an invasive plant removal or something like
Like
that.
how simple. Wow, how simple is that? That,
Yes, and how great in the big
instead of
picture.
prescribing drugs, it's like, hey, have you tried taking a walk 2 times a day around some plants and flowers?
Yes, and of course it depends on how severe things are, right? Like I don't mean to say that that walk is going to take care of everything, but I do feel like it's important to use it in our sort of
Robin said
toolkit.
garden therapy 101.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
exactly.
I think the Osher Center, I think that's how you say it, or Osher Center, the
Mhm.
Integrative Health Center at Vanderbilt, I think they're doing, they offer acupuncture and yoga, and so there's different modalities I think they're offering. And hopefully one of they offer some gardening classes too. That would be great. So there's another question from, let's see, Joanne Logan. Do trees release compounds that affect our mood?
So that, yes, to some extent. So I am not aware of like all the research, but I am familiar with this, the concept of tree bathing. And it sort of was popularized in Japan. And some trees have certain aromatic compounds that were found to improve mood and reduce anxiety. I think it's mainly like conifers and pines and so forth. But I'm not like, I don't know if all the trees have been studied and which trees like in our ecosystem are the most powerful at this point. But yes, I would say yes, and more research would be needed on my part, but I would love to look into it as well. Maybe you guys have any other thing like Monica or Maris, like maybe you guys have extra thoughts or info about that.
I think it's what I would just add that there are also, it is known that certain herbs are beneficial because not just as a tea, but as a scent, as a smell. So that's relating to this, I think.
Absolutely.
There's this guy on here. I don't know if you know him. His name's Bieke Puncochar. He said, I'd love to see the Dutchman's. I'd love to see the Dutchman's pipe vine as part of your kit. It's the host plant of the pipe vine swallowtail.
Uh-huh. Yeah, this guy over there. He's yeah. For anyone who doesn't know, that's my husband. And he is very excited about the Dutchman's pipe vine, and it is actually one of the plants in our kit. So I'll go back to that whip right here. So yeah, the Dutchman's pipe vine is in our kit. So these bottom ones are all about like going to be best suited for part shade to part sun areas. Eastern blue star, a cutleaf coneflower, heartleaf, aster, and smooth hydrangea. So we have two kind of shrubby, viney things as well. And then these are our plants for the sun. So we've got swamp milkweed, Virginia mountain mint, scarlet bee balm, New Jersey tea, and swamp rose, which by the way, I'm super jazzed about the rose because native roses sometimes can be hard to find. And they support so much life. I think they're a host plant for more than 100 species of butterflies and
Wow, a New Jersey tea. I'm from New Jersey. Is that
yay! So yes. So yes, that's those are also very beautiful when they're in bloom. Um, is there anything else that people have questions about or that I can
There was one more that just jumped on. Go ahead, Bryn.
Yeah, we have one more, and then I think Monica might have some questions. And then I had a question about I know you can order your kits, but are you able to order just individual plants or pick up individual plants the day of purchase?
Yes, great question, Brent. So like the kits are sort of like you can order a full kit or you can order a half kit or you can order a bunch of kits, whatever you want to do. But if you are interested in sort of more I want one of these, one of those, then you can get them on our day of. Like so November 2nd, we'll have our kits available for pickup, but we'll also have additional species. So some people come and they have a kit, but they want more or they want more variety. Some people will come and they don't have a kit or they were too late for the online sale and they can still like buy a bunch of different fun species. So thank you for asking.
Awesome, very cool. Yeah, I'm eyeing that pipeline. So
Yes.
um we have a question from Leah Berry. Where do you source your plants?
So we have tried different places and we've experienced, different challenges, like where some places said they would be arriving this day and then they didn't. Our first sale, actually, we had to drive to people's houses afterwards to bring them the plants that didn't make it in time. So we have oftentimes worked with Izel Nursery, which they're kind of like a middleman, like they work with lots of nurseries and then they make the customer experience very pleasant. We've also worked with nurseries directly, which right now we are working with Taylor Creek Nursery, and then in the past we've worked with Kind Earth Growers, and they're all great places. And then we've grown some of the plants ourselves as well, which is the nice thing is that they are used to being in this environment and growing here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There's this beautiful comment here in the chat by Laura. She said, "Love this talk. Eco restoration has been vital in my healing journey with grief and loss. Removing invasive species over the seasons and caring from native plant babies has helped me experience my healing as an ongoing process that happens cyclically and that I'm actively participating in and in relationship with. Thank you. Beautiful."
Thank you, Laura.
That's
Really.
inspiring to me because I'm just getting started. I lived in an apartment for years, so this is the first time I can actually play in the dirt in my own space. So,
Absolutely. Well, and I think for the people who are living in an apartment and feeling like, gosh, that sounds great, but I can't do it. I would say that it's probably really beneficial to start engaging in activities that are already going on around you.
mhm.
But even like I saw a study that showed that if you have plants in your house and you have like microbially rich soil, that you can get some benefits from being like gardening those plants. And someone recently mentioned this whole idea of just like caring for a plant can trigger positive affect. And so I think that being around plants, whether inside or outside, alone or with other people, I think that either way they are beneficial for you.
There's
Yeah,
one more
fantastic. I would
question.
like to have one question. You showed us your beautiful garden, and you shared with us that there are some struggles within a garden because you plant something, and of course, our environment is full of invasive species. So the
Yeah.
deers and rabbits come to our garden, and we very often get these questions that they eat our plants that I bought and I was caring for so long. And it brings so much frustration to people. So what is your view how to balance this frustration of deers and rabbits eating the garden, and also, for example, witnessing the monarch caterpillar being eaten by a wasp, and that you were looking for it, waiting for it to grow, and then you see the devastation. What would you say as a psychologist how to deal with this, how to change a perspective?
I feel like I have an answer as a person more than as a psychologist because like I think that in these situations, yes, they can be very frustrating. And I have definitely experienced all of that, where you're just like super jazzed, or maybe the flowers are about to bloom and then like a deer gets in and like eats it. It can be very frustrating. So for me, it's kind of connected with like it makes you clever at problem solving, right? Because you're trying to find ways to make sure that like you can protect a certain area, which sometimes works and the deer will show you what doesn't work about it because they will get in some way or another. But also I think some of it is if you create this abundant space, over time and see all the interactions. I mean, the deer are, unfortunately, they're kind of they're part of the ecosystem. They are overpopulated, so they are sort of disproportionately affecting our ecosystem. But I think still, like, yeah, they're there. They need to eat as well. Or if I think about like, yeah, rabbits coming in and like nipping at flowers, like it's frustrating sometimes, but it's also they're like part of the cycle of life. So I think just be clever. That way you don't have to constantly be giving away your garden, but a little bit of a balance of like keeping some of it safe and then letting some of it be sacrificed. I think that feels like a good balance to me.
Yeah. We usually always say that plant more. So there is enough for you and the deer and the rabbits, and just add more plants, and that will balance out the feeling of loss.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think in the beginning it probably feels worse because you don't have much and you're just like, ugh. So I would definitely protect what you bring. Like if anyone here is thinking, oh, I'm going to start a native garden now, I would say protect what you have, like put little cages around it or whatnot so that it doesn't get eaten. But then once a plant is pretty well established, even if the deer do eat a good bit of it, the plant won't die and it'll come back. And you might have to wait until the next season, but nature is very regenerative. So
Yay. Well, that's it's time for us, guys. We've enjoyed your talk. Thank you so
thank
much, Bieke,
you.
and thank you for everybody who came. We're gonna have this recording up on our YouTube, and we'll definitely be sending it out to everyone so that you can watch later again if you need to. And all the resources are there, and you can always reach out. Any last words?
Oh, I just am so glad that everyone is here today, and I really hope that you all can start helping contribute if you're not already, just to healing the earth and healing ourselves in the process.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Fantastic. Thank you very much
Thanks,
for the presentation.
everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Bieke.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.